Yeah. What is the, okay, I'm going to start again. What is the
Hello?
difference between low level system design and high level system design? Go on.
Yeah. So high level is basically it is how modules are connected. So we are designing about the modules. In low level, we are designing about the classes and functionalities, how the flow will be.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else would like to add something to it? Anything at
Yeah,
all?
I
Yeah.
like to add something here. So high level design is more focused on the business aspect, as in if that a technical person can explain the high level design to other stakeholders, whereas in the low level design it is more technical centric focus. That is the classes and uh, how the classes are, like how the object oriented programming works, how the different classes or different modules are linked together. So in a
Correct.
layman terms, in high level design, we can explain that to business, and in low level design, we are like it is more of a technically focused thing.
Correct. Right. So LLD is basically will be focusing more on the code part, right? So how do we write the code? How do we structure it? And that is majorly what SD1, SD2 folks do. So when you join a company, you're not going to start like, making, working with DB or, deciding what DB to use or decide how communication is going to happen or how and what load balancers to use. You're not going to do that as SD1, SD2, right? It is good, like HLT is good to understand how entire system works, like to understand how Netflix works, how Swiggy, Uber, Ola, all of these, Amazon, how do they work? But when it comes to what you are going to be doing as a developer, at least in the starting years of your career, you're going to be writing code, right? And we have to focus on what? We have to focus on writing extendable code, maintainable code. Now, whenever we talk about LLD, okay, so you have to always ask yourself that whenever you are writing the code, are you writing the code such that it is extendable? What do I mean by extendable? So tomorrow, even if you leave the team and you go, right now, suppose you are the only one working on it, or suppose 5, 6 people are working on it, and all the 5, 6 people decide that we are going to leave the company and go. Even after 10 years, if someone sees the code, it should be readable, it should be understandable, it should be very easy also. And if they want to add any new features, they should be able to add on to it, right? This is a very typical company use case, right? Because we all, like, people are always leaving, people are always joining new. So developers should write code such that they are always replaceable. To, like, you should not go like, oh, if I leave, no one will be able to understand my code. If that is the case, you are not a good developer. Does it make sense, everyone? Yes. Can I see more thumbs up?
Yes.
Can I see a bit more excitement, guys? You all can hear me, see me properly. Am I making sense? Yes. Okay. Let me just, people are still joining. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. So see, and in LLD, you will hear something called solid principles a lot, design patterns a lot. Basically, our entire focus of everything is on writing maintainable, extendable, modular code, right? So basically, whatever you write, anyone should be able to understand it. Everyone should be add features to it and all of that, right? HLD was focused on systems architecture, on load balancers, cache, DB, microservices, and all of that, right? So you get the idea. Now, does everyone understand what are classes and objects? So that was added to the prerequisites of the course. So can someone quickly tell me the difference between class, object? What is a class? What is an object? Quick revision. Anyone?
Yes, Kirti. Yes, Kirti. Show me
Yeah,
there. So classes is a blueprint, and out of that we create objects.
right. Very good. So you will hear this a lot that classes are blueprint or template, or basically they tell the structure, they tell what variables are going to be there, what all functions are going to be there. And object is what? Object is actually the instance of the class, it's the entity itself. Can someone quickly give me some examples so that we can understand the difference between class and object properly?
Yes,
Eh,
Kirti. Show me there.
Yeah.
So human is a class, and out of that male and females are created.
Sorry,
Those are
I
entities.
can you repeat that again?
So we can say like human is a class, and the properties like name, age, all these could be derived into male and female classes.
Okay. Okay, got it. Guys, also for the next 5 weeks, I understand that we all start learning from examples like employee, person, all of this. But because we are supposed to be doing like, low level system design of a lot of complex systems. So whenever I say, give me an example, try to think of examples related to say Swiggy, Uber, Ola, Zomato, Amazon, or Chess, or any of these systems, so that as we discuss, you are also able to think of these systems. Any topic that we talk about, anything at all, we should be able to think in terms of these systems. Does it make sense? Yes. Now, can someone quickly give me some examples of objects versus classes in these systems?
Cars would be a class, and Honda Civic would be an object of that class, for example.
Very good. Right. Similarly, say order. Order is a class. Right now, order has what all properties. So let me just write it also. So order has many variables and methods, right? So variables meaning, okay, suppose order ID and something like, status and all of those things are suppose the properties. And then there are some methods that place order, get order details and all of that is there. But it has no information. Like order ID is a variable, but it has no value right now because it's a class. It is just a property. But as soon as you make an object or an instance of it, you're going to add values to this. So your order ID is going to have an ID. There is going to be a status, and you're actually going to talk about an entity. You're going to talk about an order, like order 1, order 2, order 3. These are objects, and then class is the order. I guess this is basics, right? Everyone understands this. Can I move ahead? Does anyone have any question in this? Can we just go ahead? Yeah, this is basics, right? Okay. Now, can someone quickly tell me, we all talk about OOPS. OOPS are so important part of LLD. What is OOPS? Like, why do we need OOPS? What is OOPS, guys?
For extensibility majorly.
But what is it? It is okay. This is their extensibility, maintainability, modular. We have to do all of that. Yes. But what is OOPS?
It's a way of programming.
OOPS is
OOPS is
basically
OOPS is a programming paradigm.
we map the object with real world.
Okay, I can say programming paradigm, but what does it mean? When I talk about what does it actually mean?
It is a
Thinking of
philosophy of
code
thinking.
in terms of objects in the world, in the real world.
Okay.
Everything is
Guys,
basically
mute yourself after you are done talking because there's a lot of disturbance coming. Mute yourself after you're done talking. Guys, everyone, mute yourself. Okay. Guys, after you're done talking, just mute yourself. Okay. OOPS is basically a way of designing and writing the code. So it lets you model, manipulate the real world concepts, entities, right? So basically it's a way of designing, right? So whatever we talk about reusability, modularity, how to achieve all of that, we are going to get that through OOPS. Now, yes, it is functional programming ka archenemy. Yes, very good. Okay. Now, can we talk about what are the major things? Yes, so someone has already said, Ritik is already telling, programming methodology, which revolves around 4 concepts: polymorphism, abstraction, inheritance, encapsulation. Okay, let's start talking about them one by one. Quick refreshment, because I know this is basics. A lot of you already know this, but for those who don't know or for those who need revision, quickly, what does encapsulation mean? What does encapsulation mean, guys?
Hiding so that you can change it later.
Data and methods together in a class.
Okay. Anyone else?
Basically we are encapsulating the data member and member function from the outer people who are actually not part of that package.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me take. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, like we are binding the data members and functions of a class collectively, and we are like preventing the direct access of the class members and functions from
Correct.
outside world.
Very good. Very good. Now, let's take an example and let's try to understand. Suppose we are talking about Amazon or Swiggy or Zomato order. Now, if it is an order has a lot of things, right? It has a product, an item, number of items, like quantities, the number of items, then suppose order ID or description or anything, status, all of that information is there. If we don't put it all together, those are just different items, right? So we have to put them together. So when you put them together, if you have to think of it in a capsule, or you have to encapsulate it basically in a class. So you are bundling the data. Data is basically your variables and the methods or the functions that are going to operate on that data in a single unit. Your unit is what? Your unit is your class. So we are encapsulating everything together. So it obviously ensures your data integrity. Plus, from that, as you all already said, that we are making sure that firstly there is clear separation of code. That okay, we are talking about this entity right now. We're talking about product or an order or an employee or a person or a delivery partner or whoever we are talking about, right? So we are doing a clear separation of concerns. Plus, we are ensuring data integrity. So I can see a lot of people are also saying access control. So how do we control the access? So basically there are private, public, protected, right? Can someone quickly tell me what are private, public, protected? Because we are going to be discussing code in C++ and Java. So we should understand public, private, protected. What is it? Can someone quickly tell me?
These are access modifiers.
So what do they mean?
So basically, they tell you whether that particular variable which is defined inside a class is accessible outside the class or not. So when we talk about public, so whenever a variable or a method is declared as public, so they can be accessible outside the class also. And whenever a variable or class is defined as private, so they cannot be accessed outside the class. And
what about protected?
Yeah, and when we talk about protected, so protected members can only be accessed by child class of that particular class.
Okay.
So when we talk about child class, yeah, so that means the class which has inherited its property, that is termed as the child class.
Okay. So I guess, are you a C++ person?
Yes, I am a C++ person. Yeah.
So Java people are going to say that it can be accessed by any class which is within the package, right? So only a subtle difference is there, but more or less it is that you should be able to access like from different classes within a particular package or only by the subclasses, right? So all the C++ people understand what protected means in C++, and all the people from Java understand what it does, right? Private, public is same thing. I hope you understand protected, right? Everyone understands it? Can we go ahead? Yep.
Kirti, can you repeat what is protected?
So protected, basically private, the data members are accessible only within the class, right? Public, it is accessible anywhere, right? Everywhere. Protected is that it is accessible to the derived classes. Does everyone understand inheritance over here? Let's quickly talk about inheritance also. Let me just finish this. So protected means in C++, it will mean that it is accessible only by the subclasses or the derived classes, versus in Java, it will mean that it is accessible within all the classes that are within the same package. So in Java, there are packages, right? And all the classes belong to a particular package. So whichever classes are there in a particular package, all the classes can access the protected member. Understood? Yes? Can we move ahead, guys? Okay. So we all talked about encapsulation. What is abstraction? Can someone tell me what is abstraction?
Hiding some information.
Okay.
We are hiding the implementation by providing only the service. Like in Swiggy, we are having the Google Maps used, but the Google will provide only the mapping, the service of maps, not the actual code.
Right, right.
And we can
So some people.
Can we say like we achieve abstraction through encapsulation by encapsulating the members of a class, so we can achieve abstraction?
See, we are doing almost the similar thing only. In encapsulating, we are putting the things together. but we are also controlling the access, right? In abstraction, what we are doing is whatever is the complex process, we are breaking it into simpler manageable parts. So if you talk about it like order management is a huge thing, right? So you abstract it out. You basically, suppose I am placing an order, right? So one class has to know about how, what is happening within the order, what is the status, or what is the object that is being created, how it is being created, how the things are happening within it. I don't want to know, because that information has been abstracted out from me. So basically you are simplifying your complex process. You just care that, okay, something is happening, how it is happening within that class, that is that class's headache, that is not my headache. Does it make sense a bit? Yes. So we focus only on the essential properties and behavior. So we are basically investing our time and energy into in knowing only whatever is needed, and we are ignoring the unnecessary details, right? Does it make sense? Everyone? Yep. Yes. Okay. Okay, now quickly moving ahead to, okay, we have talked about what are classes, objects, we have talked about encapsulation, what is abstraction. Let's quickly talk about inheritance also, because we already talked about derived classes. What is inheritance, guys? Why do we do it?
The child-parent relationship.
Called reusability.
So why do we do inheritance?
To
For
reuse
code
the
reusability.
For code reusability.
To reuse code.
To access the
To provide
but
access the functionality of one class, parent class, into
to
the child class.
extending the functionality. Okay, can you guys mute yourself after you're done talking? Yes. Okay. So when you are saying extending the functionality, can you quickly give me an example of like what is a parent class, what is a child class, like how are we extending the functionalities?
Like in Swiggy, for example, you could have a restaurant class and you could have a fast food chain, a cafe, uh, QSR. So all of these could be specialist classes which could inherit from the restaurant class, but they could specialize in their own functionalities.
Right. Can you give me an example? So in restaurant, they'll be their food and all of that. What will be their fast food?
You can have veg and non-veg.
That can be there in restaurant also, no?
Suppose user is logged in
North
the system.
North Indian chain, South Indian chain, something like that.
Okay, makes sense. So maybe multiple types of chains. Okay.
Basically,
but what
user class is there, and customer and delivery will be the other classes derived from them.
User is there, and what are you extending?
Customer and delivery. This is for two both. Both are like inheriting from that class.
Suppose in Ziradha, like there can be, we can place orders like buy order and sell order. So order can be extended into buy order and sell order.
I like this example, buy order and sell order. Okay, now give me okay, my question to you is, there are some properties within order, right? There are some variables, there are some functions. What extra properties? Someone guys mute yourself. There is an echo coming. Yes. So my question is that there are some properties, variables, and functions in order. And now you're saying we are going to extend in buy order, sell order. What are the extra properties that are there in buy order, sell order that are not there in order?
Market price.
That is there for both, no? So why can't I just add in the order?
I mean, tax for both the orders are different.
Number of shares present.
It will be different, but it is still the property is same only, no?
Yeah,
So
the property
The behavior is different.
A validate method could be different here.
You can have a stop
buy
loss.
type and sell type property.
The
life
stop loss
cycle of an
will be in sell
order,
order.
in case of buy order and sell order, is different. A buy order will always get closed with the selling, and a sell order will always get closed with the buy order, right? So if you go into the terms of business, a buy order is
So if I have a function that perform and then close, so it will close after that. Like what property is different or what function is different?
I think wallet balance will be
include
Buy order exactly occurs when the market price comes below or at the buy order. Sell price occurs when market price goes above or exactly at the sell price. So that is a
Stop
method.
loss, basically.
So that's a method that is
For selling,
let's say
selling
they have a
required
base
code
class.
and buying.
One by one, guys. One by one. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, let's say they have a base class function called place order, and the behavior of the place order will be different for buy order class and the sell order class. So the behavior is different.
Okay, right. So this making the behavior different, what is the term called?
Polymorphism.
Right, polymorphism. What does polymorphism means? It's called, poly is called many, and morphism is basically forms or whatever you want to call it. So basically, whenever you want different implementations of the same thing, you're going to do polymorphism, right? Now, there are different kinds of polymorphism. Can someone tell me what are the different kinds?
Runtime polymorphism and static polymorphism.
Compile
time, yes. So compile time and runtime. Can someone tell me what is the difference?
Templates and virtual functions in C++.
Overloading and overriding.
Method
override.
Function
Right. So
overloading
here,
and operator overloading.
yes, very good. So here we do overloading. Can you tell me what is function overloading or operator overloading?
In function overloading, we
the
mention the same name, but the parameters, the type of parameters is different, or the number of the parameters is different.
The signature itself is different. Number of yes. Can someone give me an example of function overloading?
Print function generally used.
So give me an example. Guys, whenever I have to
Like-
give an example, think of Swiggy, Uber, Ola, Zomato, Chess, any of these, like, IRCTC, any of these good systems that we'll be discussing. I want examples from there, not random examples. Now give me a good example of function overloading.
So for example, in the order buy case, right? In the order buy and the sell case, in the buy, we'll be checking the wallet balance as well, like whether we are eligible to buy the stock or not. So maybe we can pass the wallet balance as one of the parameter in buying and in one function. So that will determine which button needs to be called.
Okay.
So process payment is there, while like credit card, UPI, that should be there.
Okay. So what will be the different functions over here?
Yeah, like credit cards are there, like we can add like wallet, UPI ID that we can select in like different function we can create for that.
Okay. So basically, whenever you are passing different parameters, that is called function overloading. The number of the parameters can be different. I know. See, the thing is that these are very basics, and that is why I am not spending too much time on this because. Okay, Anjani is saying, Kirti, it is better if you only explain these concepts and ask us. Feels like people who know are only getting revision. Yes. Is there anyone who doesn't know these things? Because a lot of people already knows this or know this. And if there's anyone who's struggling with it, please let me know. I'll explain it again. Is there anyone who has any confusion till here? Everyone understands what is encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism. When I talk about design patterns and all of that, only I will be talking. At that time, none of you will be talking. Right now, this is like basic stuff. That is why I'm letting you guys talk. Is this okay? Everyone has understood function overloading? Yes? Okay. Someone still has doubt in abstraction and encapsulation. What is the doubt? Like, can you tell me what is the doubt? Okay. Okay, let's just talk about function overloading. Compile time, see, basically when you have different functions with different number of parameters, the signature itself is different. Those are two different functions essentially. And at compile time itself, our compiler is going to know that, okay, these are different functions and they have to be treated in a different way because the signature itself is different, right? Versus in runtime polymorphism, the thing is completely different. Okay, who is going to tell me runtime polymorphism before I get into the details? What is there in runtime polymorphism? Right?
So, yes. So, Kirti, for example, you mark a function as virtual. So, basically, it will be late binded and it would be run on the context rather than, for example, if you have a like a parent class pointer pointing to a child card pointer, and then you've marked that function as virtual. So basically during runtime, it will be decided that whether the parents function would be called or the children's function would be called. So
Right.
it would, yeah.
So
I
how
think
is it
you
achieved
explained it
both
better.
in C++ and Java? Can someone tell me how is it?
Decorators is a good example of runtime polymorphism, no? Method overriding.
It is known
Yes.
as dynamic method dispatching, I guess.
Yes. Can someone tell me how is it implemented in C++ and Java? Like in C++, how is it implemented?
Through virtual functions.
Okay, what are virtual functions?
In which basically the definition of the virtual functions is defined in the derived
They are
class.
late binding functions.
Late binding. Okay, let us quickly write it. So if I have, give me 1 second, guys. So I have a virtual void, say function, okay, over here, and I have some implementation over here. Okay, so this is class A. Then I have class B, which inherits, say, public class A. Okay, and I have same thing. So void func. Now tell me, how do I call this function and this function? Now I've added the virtual, right? So how is it runtime polymorphism and what do I do to call these functions?
So VPTR is used to call these two functions at the runtime, like it will be decided using the VPTR.
Upcasting. Actually, what is happening if you are creating pointer of class A, it is assigning to the object of B.
Relax. Okay, relax. Guys, mute. There's a lot of disturbance coming.
Upcasting.
Guys, I don't know who is it. I think it is someone called Vicky. Like there's a lot of disturbance happening. Don't start unmuting yourself together. It will become very haphazard. Okay. So if I do this, let me take names. Okay, let me take names. Can you raise your hand, whoever can tell in C++? Can you raise your hand and I will say, Utkarsh, are you raising your hand?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell now how to do this?
If there is a pointer to an object of class B, and the object type is of class A, then it will
pointer type is of A or class the object type is of A?
Yes, you have written it right, and
okay.
It will execute function of class B because it is a virtual function in class A.
Okay, will this execute A wala or B wala? Which function?
B wala.
Does everyone
B1,
know this?
B1.
Can you tell me in the chat quickly who all are saying B1 and A1? Chat, come on. Who is telling me B1 or A1? Which one will be called? B? Right. And if I want to call the A1, what will I do?
Then pass the A object itself.
Pass the A object itself, then A wala will be called. What else? What other way is there to call A wala?
You can typecast also, I guess.
A scope resolution operator func.
Yes, I can do that. I can say base or super. I can do all of that, right? So yes, super keyword. In Java, how can I do this? How is runtime polymorphism come into picture? Java people, who is going to tell me?
Yeah, same like whatever you have done in C++, like we'll be creating,
There's no
let's
pointer,
say.
right? So yes.
No, nothing is there. Let's say public void X method you have created in the parent class. Let's say one child class B you have created which extends the A class, and same function you will just overwrite and write down the implementation. And if you'll create object of B and store that into A class, then B class method will be called. If you'll create object of A and store into A, then A class method will be called. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's similar in Java. The only thing is that there is no virtual function, no virtual keyword that comes into picture, and you can easily just create the one. And if you want to call the base class one, you can use the super keyword. That's super.func. Make sense, everyone? Yes. Guys, see, these are just basics. I want to quickly cover them because when we start writing a lot of code, it will be much clearer. I just wanted to make this a bit more interactive so that you can do this.
I think we can create abstract classes in Java,
Yes.
similar to the virtual.
Yes, let's
classes.
come to the abstract and the abstract classes and interfaces part. Chinmaya, if you are a JS student, it is fine if you're feeling it overwhelming. So this, we are focusing on C++ and Java. Like, let's pick it up on Discord. I will help you out, and I can help you out separately also. People who are not from C++ Java background, because we are going to be talking about a lot of code, it can get overwhelming. Just message me separately. We can do a separate class, or I can help you out on Discord or whatever. Okay, for now, just try to understand as much as possible, because like I'm going to be writing code in C++ and Java, so I have to talk about it. Okay, no problem for those who are from JS background, it will get clearer. See, concepts like classes you must have understood, objects you must have understood, right? And you must have understood what is inheritance, what is encapsulation, what is abstraction. The only thing that you must not have understood is that how to implement runtime polymorphism and compile time polymorphism. So this much is clear for everyone: encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance. All of this is clear for everyone. Now let's talk about abstract classes and interfaces. Can someone tell me what is the difference between abstract class? Okay, raise hand, don't unmute yourself. Raise hand when I tell you to unmute yourself, only then do that. Abstract class and interface. What is abstract class? What is an interface?
So Kirti, I have one request. Before moving to abstract class or interface, can we talk about virtual pointer and virtual table if you are talking about runtime polymorphism?
See, that is a very C++ specific thing. If needed, we can do it separately, and I can do that. But right now, we have to focus on generic things more, and we can do that separately. How things work internally, I don't think we need to focus on that right now. We need to focus more on how to write the code, like the modular code, right? And we will get into the details. But for now, let's finish this flow at least, because I also have to cover solid principles today.
Sure.
Yes?
Sure.
Okay. Who can someone raise a hand to tell me what is abstract class, what is interface? Any Java person? Right. Naveen is saying abstract class is a class without methods. So why would we write a class without methods? Why do we have a class where there are no methods?
Abstract, we can say abstract class as an incomplete class where there is concrete methods as well as abstract methods.
Because you want to override them I'm sorry.
Yes. Can someone give me an example where we would need to use interface on an abstract class? Give me an example. Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Ola. Any example? Start thinking. I want you guys to think with the class.
I think when we consider Swiggy or Zomato for payment, let's say we want to do payment through credit card or like UPI. So the pay method can be actually defined in an interface for the payment interface, and that can be implemented by different ways in which we can actually do the payment. So that is.
So suppose there is like, suppose make payment is the class, okay? And okay, this is.
So this is going to be an interface which has the method.
So there is one method, say, so the method, what is there is suppose pay, right? And then there are classes, suppose that is GPay payment, right? That is going to inherit from make payment, and also say Paytm payment. That is the example you have given, right?
Yeah,
now see, now what we want is sometimes in our classes, like suppose we have made a class for make payment. We want to tell that if you are inheriting from me, if you are inheriting from this class, you have to implement a particular function, which is the payment function. So what will happen is that these classes should be somehow forced to have this function. Like you have to have this function, otherwise it is wrong. Like for example, place an order. You should have, like suppose I have place order or make delivery. Let's say make delivery. Right? So now suppose this is one class. Now there are suppose different delivery ways, suppose bike delivery or suppose car delivery, whatever is there, but they have to do the delivery part, right? So there will be a function which they have to implement it, right? So we are just telling that you have to implement a particular method. Okay, you have to have these things. So that way, what are we doing is we are setting a template for them that, okay, now you have to do this. How you do it is your responsibility. Okay. Now, when in a particular class, there are only these kind of functions that need to be implemented by their child classes or subclasses or derived classes, that is called an interface. Okay, that is called an interface in which the classes are such that all the derived classes or subclasses have to implement these functions. Can you give me one more example? We already took the payment delivery. Can you give me one more example? Let's think of more examples.
For food integrants
In
are
Netflix, we have different interface, like different ways of watching a video, right? We have different interfaces we can watch on phone,
Suppose
tablet.
there are different video players. Okay, so there is suppose one video player, and inside that the function is suppose play video, correct? And now this whatever the video player is, suppose a phone video player, right? Or suppose there is iPad video player, or there is suppose laptop video player. Now the way suppose the video is being played is different, or maybe the encoding is different or something is different. All of them have to have a play video function. So what are we doing is we are creating an interface, and all the classes that derive from this class will be forced to have this play video, right? You understand the point now? So this is extremely important. Now sometimes what can happen is that we might want that there is some by default, there is some function that is over here. Suppose in make payment, we have written pay, but suppose we have say register the payment portal or whatever is there. And we have a common code that will be there for GPay also and for Paytm also. Now, suppose we decide that we want to write that common code in this super class or the base class itself. Then instead of calling that interface, we call that abstract class. Basically, in simple terms, no function will be implemented, or there will be no function written, or the definite, it will be only defined. And if there is some implementation of the function, then it will be an abstract class. If it is not implemented, it is going to be an interface. Does it make sense on a higher level? Does it make sense, everyone?
In chess game, we have a piece class that has a move method. So different pieces has to implement a different move implementation.
Yes. Let me tell you like how it is different for C++ and Java firstly. So in C++, what happens is, mute yourself, please. Mute yourself.
Sorry, Kirti, can you please give one more example for the usage of interface and abstract? I mean, I understood the interface concept, but with abstract, I didn't exactly get it. It's more like an interface where we can actually override the methods, right? So that is where the exact usability of abstract class is where I just want a concrete example, as in real world example.
Sure. Let's take examples. Give me 1 minute. Let's quickly see that how is it implemented in different languages, right? In C++, what happens is there are pure virtual functions. So you will hear this a lot. Guys, I am getting to these details, but you won't have to bother so much about them. When we look at the code, you will get used to it. So if it is overwhelming right now, it's completely fine. It's just the first day. Just listen through it. And in 2-3 classes, it will become a very simple thing for you. Just give it some time. Just stay with me, have the trust. Okay. Now let's talk about pure virtual functions. So suppose there is one class A, and inside this, how we write is virtual, whatever is the return type, say void func. And whenever I do equal to 0, that means it has become a pure virtual function. When it is a pure virtual function, that means that whichever class is inheriting from this class, say A, will have to implement this function. Okay, otherwise we'll get an error. Because it's a pure virtual function, we have to implement it. Now this is an interface currently. Now suppose at least if there is one class, it will be called an abstract class. So this is also an abstract class, and it can also be called an interface. In C++, you will see the terms being used interchangeably. Versus now in this itself, if I add another function, say virtual itself, virtual void, suppose I add func2. But in this case, what I do is I add some implementation of the function that, yeah, you do this, some cout is there. Okay. Now these classes, they won't have to write func2 because the implementation is already there. Now, if there is any function which has the implementation and is not pure virtual function, it is no longer an interface, it is an abstract class. The thing is, you cannot create object of either abstract class or interfaces. You can create objects only of the derived classes. Make sense for the C++ people, right? For Java, there are two different keywords, right? So there is one abstract and there's one abstract class and there's one interface. You extend abstract classes. So basically you are doing inheritance versus interface, you're implementing it. From the term itself, you should be able to understand it. When we implement it means what? There is no definition. There is no implementation. There is no implementation of the function inside interface. You are just writing the definition. So it is like, so if there is class A, right? So if this is an interface, not class, you will just have functions and there will be no implementation of the function. Versus whichever class is going to implement it, suppose there is func1, func2, func3, this class B, whichever is implementing the class A, will be forced to have the implementation of function1, function2, function3. Make sense? Yes, it is more or less the same thing. In C++, there are no different keywords for abstract class and for interface, but it means the same thing only. Even if there is one implementation of the function, you are going to call it an abstract class, not an interface. And if you extend an abstract class and you implement an interface. Now, same terminology should be used for both C++ and Java. Does it make sense? Does it make sense, guys?
Yeah, Kirti, can you also explain members, like your data members, how in the abstract class and in interface do they vary, or is it only functions?
Okay, let me cover that. So extend abstract class and we implement interfaces. This is true. You can use the same terminology for C++ also. A lot of C++ people will use this interchangeably, but don't get confused. If there is implementation of any function, you call it abstract class, don't call it interface. That is the better way to go about it. Does this much make sense, guys? Yes? Can I get quick yeses? Can I get quick yeses, guys? Okay. Coming to the different, you were talking about data variables, right? So the variables basically, whatever is there in abstract class or in interface, that will be accessible in the derived class also, right? But so there are different things. There is final, there is static. I don't want to get into the details of that. So if you call it final, that means it cannot be extended, or it cannot be changed in the subclasses, or it cannot be extended at all, right? Okay, let me, for Java people, quickly covering this. I was not planning to cover this because the doubt came. I'm quickly covering it. If someone doesn't know it, don't get confused or don't get overwhelmed. Quickly covering this for Java people. If it is a final class, that means you cannot make a subclass out of it. You cannot extend it. Final class, okay? It cannot be further extended. It cannot be further specialized. If it is a final method, a function, that means you cannot override by subclasses. You prevent the modification. If it is a final variable, that means you cannot initialize, like you cannot change the value, right? Whatever was the initialized value, that will be there. Let me quickly write it down also. So this is only for Java people. There are 3 keywords. So for final, basically they can be a final class, they can be a final method, or they can be a final variable. If it is a class, that means you cannot extend it. Okay. So if it is final, you saying you cannot extend it. Basically, no more inheritance after this. If it is a method, cannot override it. Override, you understand, no? That in the subclass, you cannot have another function with the same name, right? Variable, that means the value cannot be changed, can't change value. right? So there are different levels. There is final, there is static. We'll get into all of these details. But for now, has everyone understood what is OOPS? Does everyone has a like a bit of idea of what is encapsulation, what is abstraction, what is inheritance, and what is polymorphism? A bit of idea. We'll cover it in detail a lot more, but can we, like, has everyone understood this much? We'll take a lot of more examples. I know Rekha asked me for an example, but I will take it more later. For now, does everyone understand this much? Yes, all of this will be elaborated in much more detail. Don't worry. You have a bit idea about it. Yes, can we move ahead for now? Yes.
Kirti, can you please explain a bit about static?
See, static, basically, you create objects of a particular class, correct? So when we create objects of a particular class, if it is static, that means that a particular function will belong to class and not to the object. That means you will see, we will use this a lot in singleton and all of this. You like when we learn those design patterns. So that means the same function is going to be applicable for every classes. So suppose, let me give an example. So if there is a static function, if it is a static class, firstly, you don't need to create an object of it at all, right? So you can just have, so suppose the class is A, you can just call like A func. And suppose there was an integer value inside this and you do suppose I++. So every time you call this func, even it is from different objects, your same value will be increased because it is the same function for everyone. And we will look at the example. We'll look at the code also. Don't worry. This is the first class, guys. Final, static, all of this will get much, much more clearer once we start looking at the codes. For now, do you get a rough idea? Can we move ahead? Everyone? Guys, have patience with me, please. Everyone have trust. We will cover everything in detail properly. Just, maintain your passion and energy. We will cover everything together. Yes? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's start and let's cover solid principles now. Now, for those who do not know solid, guys, solid is one of the most important parts of LLD and you need to understand. Give me 1 sec. Okay. Okay, yeah. Can we get to the solid part? Is everyone ready with it? Yes? Okay. What does solid stand for? What does S stand for?
Single responsibility.
Single responsibility principle. Can someone tell me what the single Okay. Firstly, what is solid principles? Why do we need solid principles? From where does it come? Why do we need it? Can someone tell me this firstly?
So it's both for writing plain code and also can be used for designing clean architecture.
Right. So basically, these are principles or the way you should be writing code to make it extendable, maintainable, reusable, all of that. So these are exactly the best practices to code a software. Now, right now we are learning solid, and while learning solid, you might find it a bit overwhelming, honestly, right now. Now, what will happen is we will look at shortcuts after this, which will be our design patterns. Now, when you look at the design patterns, you will understand that how solid is followed. So today you might be overwhelmed. If you are hearing solid for the first time, you might get a bit overwhelmed. But when you start looking at design patterns and more details, you will realize that this is actually what you have been doing. But these principles are the base. You need to understand it. And a lot of times, if you get confused at any point while writing the code, while designing a low-level system, your question should be, am I following solid principles or not? Right? Yes, solid is sort of the theory and design patterns is sort of implementing that and sort of like practical, as Rahul is saying. Everyone understands what it is, right? Like, why are we studying solid? So this is probably today and tomorrow are probably the only classes when we are going to be doing so much theory. After this, it will get a lot more interesting because day after tomorrow itself, we will start looking at the code and we'll look at both C++ and Java code. So it will become much more easier. Understood? Okay. Now a lot of you were saying single responsibility principle. Can someone tell me what does single responsibility principle mean? What does it mean? I can see Naveen saying a class should have only one reason to change. Akshay is saying one method is responsible for achieving one specific goal. एक चीज करे एक function. Okay, correct. So all of you are correct. Now I want you to give me examples. So basically it is a guideline for designing, right? Now suppose, let me give you, a very typical example that I give everywhere. Suppose I am placing an order. Okay, now I have to validate my order. There are multiple things that I have to validate while placing any order, right? I have to check the user inputs. I have to check for security. Can the user place the order? Like suppose I'm doing it in Zerodha. I have to check, does the user have enough funds or does the user have enough stocks to sell? All of that also I have to check. I have to also generate the error messages. Should all of this be done in one class or separate classes according to SRP? Now I want the answer. I want the answer in the comments that if I have to validate a particular order, so, and I am doing multiple things in order validation, right? Now I can see a lot of you are saying separate classes, but now I can argue with you and say that, these are really big things that I'm doing. I'm checking for security. So I could have created separate classes, say security validation, or stock number validation or fund validation or something like that. I could have had different classes. Right, Hemant is correct. It is very, very subjective. And that is what I wanted to tell you. That, see, SRP is basically a guideline. And it is very, very subjective. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. As I said, see, some people will say that order validation is one responsibility. So all of that should be in one class. So as I can see, that a lot of you are saying one class. Madhu said one class. Sri Rajni said one class. But Naveen, Anubhav, Darshan, all of you, like Darshan is saying single class. But a lot of you said separate classes. Vivek said, Chevanti said single class. Roli said one class. But I could argue and I could say that, they are really big things to do, like security validation, fund validation, user input validation. All of that are different big things to do. Why not make different classes, right? So this is a very, very subjective term. So again, there will be no right and wrong over here. Plus, I could see someone was saying over here, someone was saying that we can have, who was saying that why don't we create different functions within the same class itself? I can't see it, but someone was saying that within the same class only, suppose we create one class for order validation, and then within this we have, say, different functions. So function 1 will do validation for, say, security, function 2 will do for, say, user input and all of that, right? Now, this is again very, very subjective, and you could argue with this. There are actually different levels of single responsibility. So for those of you who attended high level system design, we talked about single responsibility in microservices also, that this microservice will be responsible to perform this action, single responsibility of microservice. Similarly, you can argue about single responsibility of a particular class, or you can argue about single responsibility of a particular function. So there are different levels at which they can be single responsibility. Correct? Everyone understands this much? There was one example. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I cannot understand the term subjective. Can you explain?
Okay. Did you understand the order validation example that we did? Okay, let's take another example. Suppose I have, say, user data. Okay, now this is going to be there everywhere. Now in this user data, there are, suppose, some data, suppose name and employee ID or whatever is there, like suppose some data is there. Now suppose I have different functions inside this. Suppose update, there are, suppose, getters, update or setters, whatever you want to call it, right? So there are different functions. Now I also have another function, say update the data to DB, right? Now some people can argue and say that, what, updating to DB is a separate thing. It is a different responsibility because we are talking to DB. So some people will say that you should have user data in one class, and for updating the data to DB, you should have a separate class. And that is the guidelines that usually companies follow. They will say that data to DB or DB connector or something like that will be class. And this class will be responsible for sending the data to the database, right? Now, but you can argue that user data is still connected over here, right? This is something related to user data only. So one person will argue that because the user data is still related to this database, I should have it within this class, versus some people will say that no, because it is related to DB, there should be a different class. Does everyone understand this? Does everyone understand this much? Yes. So yes, so some people can argue that it should be within the class. Some people will argue that it should be two different classes. Now, what is the responsibility over here is subjective. What is subjective? Basically, I can say everything related to user data is one responsibility. Now, in that everything, if I say that adding to database is also part of that responsibility, then okay, then this works. But if I say that only managing the user data is this class's responsibility, but sending the data to DB is this class's responsibility, that is a different way, right? So the term single responsibility becomes subjective. Similarly, that's what I said over here, order validation. Now, some people will say that just make one order validator class, and inside this have different kinds of functions. So suppose validate user inputs. They can be, say, validate security or, security checks, perform security checks. They can be validate funds or permissions. If there is subscription, then you might want to check subscription permission and all of that, right? Now, some people might say that everything related to validation is one responsibility. It is the responsibility of this class. Versus some people might say that no, it should not be the responsibility of one class, but create two small classes. One class's responsibility will be, say, security checks, order security checks, checker. Yeah, and another class can be, say, permission checker. Right, so they can be multiple functions. Now, do you get the point of what do I mean by being subjective? So it is a guideline. We have to discuss and we have to understand that at what point do we really stop dividing our classes to even smaller classes? Because we can keep on doing that. You can keep arguing that this is not a single responsibility class. You're not following single responsibility. I can keep arguing with you. Give me any example of any class that is following single responsibility. Give me any one example right now. Anyone would like to try? Any example of a class that follows single responsibility?
Logging class.
Input output stream.
Okay, logging class. See, I can argue that I want different classes for warning log, for debug log, for info log, for error log. I want different classes for that. I can argue. For someone who said input output stream, I can argue that I want different class for input and output. For authentication, I can argue that I want different classes. Like within authentication, like checking the input, checking the password, that these can be different levels, right? So again, this is very subjective, but as we write more and more code, we will understand. And this is where understanding the requirements will also come in picture a lot, because based on the number of requirements, and you should know what can come up in future. And that is why when we talk about extendability, it is very, very important. When we talk about is your code extensible, that means if tomorrow, if new features come, can you adapt very nicely? Like for example, I made this into one class, but now I have I added something like subscriptions, right? Now I have not written the code properly. I will have to add subscriptions over here itself. And now suppose one team was making changes in, say, security, another team is making changes in funds, another team is working in subscription. There are 3 teams working on the same damn class, right? So it also depends on the level of, level of the code that you are writing for, how much you are going to need to extend it. Does it make sense? Yes. Although I think HLD students will understand trade-offs and it is all subjective. I guess you understand these terms, right? So has everyone gotten a fair idea of what is SRP? We are going to keep saying single reason to change or should have one responsibility. Yes.
Just one question, like let's say we take transaction class, okay, and let's say we have asset properties, otherwise the transaction wouldn't be complete. So can we, so what will be in this case? Like, can we relate it both?
I didn't understand. What do we have following as?
Let's say asset properties are there in database, right? So if any function fails, we deemed as transaction as failed. Okay. So can we, so if we take transaction class in that case, so can we say that it should be under one class only?
No, I can argue that there should be separate classes for error management. If there is some error that happens, there should be a separate class. Suppose the transaction happens, there should be a separate class. Saving the values to DB should be a separate class. Like I can I'm saying there is no right and wrong. I cannot say you that, yeah, you should do this or you shouldn't do this. Preeti was asking me, where do we stop dividing it then? Because we can keep dividing the classes to really small. That is where your requirements, how extendable you want to make your code. Where do you realize that if I keep dividing this class more, I'm just increasing my work and it doesn't make sense anymore. So when we look at the examples after this, you need to be thinking about solid principles. Like you need to think, am I following single responsibility? So your yes, intuition is what Love is saying. So that plays a huge role, right? So also, K. Haran is asking, is solid principles applicable for language supporting OOPS? Yes, because we are talking about object-oriented programming, right? So yes, we have to talk about this only. Do you have a rough idea now? Yes, can we go ahead? Can we go to O of solid? What is O of solid, guys? So solid, we have already covered SRP. What is O?
Open close principle.
Open close principle. What does that mean?
Open for extension, closed for modification.
What does it mean? Like, okay, you told me the definition, but what does it mean? Anyone who can explain me?
We should not
So
class that is
your
already
code
tested.
should incorporate requirements without changing the original written code.
Very good. Someone was saying something.
Yeah, I was saying that we should not alter the class that has been already tested before. We should only extend.
Very good.
A class
Okay.
should allow to add new features, but you should not do it without modifying the existing code.
Exactly. Very good. Okay. Now let me answer it for those who are hearing it for the first time. See, in very simple terms, once you have written any code, once it is tested, once it is pushed, okay, it is tested, it is done. Now you should never have to modify it. You should be able to add any new functionality and it should be extendable. So you should be able to extend it. A lot of people get confused, open for modification or open for extension. Like from the name itself, if you think about it, you are trying to write extendable code. So it has to be open for extension and you should not have to modify the present code. So closed for modification, open for extension, closed for modification. Does it make sense? Once you have written any code, you should not, once you have tested it, you should be able to add new features. You should not have to change the code. Now, okay, it sounds very easy right now, but let's see how it is done. Someone took the example of logging right now, right? So let us take the example of logging itself. So suppose there is a logger. Now from this, I have two loggers. I have debug logger and I have info logger. Now suppose I have another logger, say error logger. So when this comes, I should not have to make any changes to any of this. Can I do that? And how will that work? Can anyone tell me? Can I add? So I want to add another functionality of error logging without changing any of this code. How can I do that?
You can
So
have a parent class as a logger.
Logger will be the base class.
Logger can be
And
interfaced.
all the types of logging will be derived from this base class.
Another
Right.
subclass.
Yes, so all of you are able to tell basically because I wrote the code in such a way to make it very easy for you. So basically, see, the point is that if we did not follow inheritance, if we did not follow OOPS, if we did not do it properly, if suppose there was a logger And suppose in my log function, there was an if else, that if suppose it is a debug type, then you return debug logger dot log or whatever. You do this kind of logging, right? You write over there that this is the debug log. Else if, and else if, suppose it was like this. Now suppose, or a switch statement, something like that. Now if I had to add error log, I had to make change in this. And this code is already tested and it is already working fine. Now suppose it was error and info earlier, and I am adding debug. Okay, and I had this this if else. Now when I added this debug, no, now suppose an intern was doing it, and intern forgot to add a break statement or something like that, and all the error logs also stopped working and info also stopped working. Now what happened for debug, which is not even important for production? What is important for production? It is error is important, info is important. Debug is for us, right? We made some change in debug and things have stopped working for error and info also. Things have stopped working in production. You understand? Like a small error can lead to a huge problem. Now, just because we are adding something which is debug, which is for us, we shouldn't have to test error logs and info logs, right? We want to check only we want to check only for debug, right? When you suppose you have a different tester, right? And you have added a debug logger. Now, when you add debug logger, will you tell your tester, you know what, because I added a debug logger, go test all the error logging also and all the info logging also? If your code was written a proper way, then you would not have to test all of this. You would have to test only debug logging. But because the code was not extendable, you had to test other features also. Does it make sense? This happens in our daily work, right? That we end up doing what? We end up testing things that were already working before just because we added a new functionality. And if the code was following solid principles, we wouldn't have to do that. Does it make sense? So that is why these are the questions that you need to ask yourself. Tomorrow, if I bring a new functionality, if I add something to this, will I have to make change to this code? This is the question that we'll be asking ourselves a lot of times. If I leave the team, can someone understand? Is this extendable? Is it maintainable? If a new feature comes, what is going to happen? These are the questions that we're going to be answering for the next 5 weeks. Make sense for everyone?
Kirti, I have a question. So are you saying that if you follow solid principles, there won't be any regressions?
Mostly there won't be. Like whatever new functionality you are adding, you would have to do in that. But if you follow this properly, there shouldn't be. Like you shouldn't have to test the previous code. That is what we are trying to say.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. One more thing, guys, I want you to notice. We are talking about solid principles, right? We also talked about abstract classes and interfaces. Slowly, you will realize that interface and abstract classes, this entire concept is going to save you a lot. You know, inheritance is going to solve a lot of problems for you. Like this if else and all that we wrote. This was not following OOPS, right? We did not do inheritance. We did not do abstraction or interfaces and all of that. And that is why it did not work out. But once I made this diagram, it was very clear for you that, okay, now what we have to do, we just have to add another error logger like this. Right? Because what did we do? We had inheritance in place. Does it make sense? Guys, can we move ahead? Like rough idea you have. Today we are just understanding the concepts, so we'll start implementing them also. Quick yeses, yeses, yeses.
Is it also very subjective when to create interface and when to create abstract class?
When to create abstract class and interface, yes, it is subjective, and we will look at a lot of examples, and I want you to tell me that whether you can understand it. Yeah, in this case, abstract classes make sense, or in this case, interface makes sense. It will start coming to you. It is just matter of say 2-3 more classes. After that, you will be telling me that no, this doesn't make sense, this makes sense. Okay, so stay patient. Yep. Okay, okay, quick revision. In solid, what was S? What was S in solid?
Single responsibility principle.
Single responsibility. What was O?
Open
closed principle.
Open close principle.
Single responsibility means single reason to change. Again, very subjective. We talked about it. O means open close principle, open for extension, close for modification. Once you've written the code, you shouldn't have to change it to add any new functionality. Coming to the L part, can anyone tell me what does L stand for?
List
of substitution.
Okay. What does it mean? What does list of substitution principle mean?
Subclasses should be substitutable for their base classes.
Right. Very good. Anyone else who would like to explain? Okay, I know it sounds very scary.
And stability of parent class and don't narrow it down. We can substitute subclasses object with the parent one.
Opposite.
We should be able to substitute a child class object in a parent class variable without any specific condition.
Right, right. Now, okay, I know many people are overwhelmed, many beginners are overwhelmed. Let us forget LSP, whatever the name says. Okay, let's try to understand in very easy way. What does inheritance mean? Okay, inheritance means that if we have, say, class A, and if we inherit class B, right? All the properties of class A should be there in class B, correct? Everyone agrees to this. Can I get quick yeses?
Yes.
Okay. Now, why are we inheriting? To extend, right? We want to add some extra features, right? We want to add some extra features or want to make some changes. Like, for example, if there is an employee and if I have, say, manager and suppose secretary or suppose a developer, whatever is it, right? So I am extending some features or I am making some changes according to this new things, right? But wherever I am using employee, I should be able to use manager, secretary, developer. Does it make sense? If I am doing employee dot pay salary, I should be able to do, say, secretary dot pay salary. I should be able to do developer dot pay salary. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yes. So what I am saying is that anywhere where we are using the base class, it is a very simple inheritance thing, right? So wherever you are using the base class seamlessly, right, you should be able to replace it with a derived class without breaking anything, without knowing that you have done this, right? So as long as you don't break anything in the base, like wherever you were using base class, you should be able to add derived class without breaking anything. Yes, exactly. That is what inheritance is. Exactly. Right. But there is one small touch over here. I will come to that. But has everyone understood this much? Has everyone understood that what does Liskov substitution mean? That everywhere where we are using the base class, we should be able to use derived class seamlessly. Like if I change wherever I am using employee, like if I am doing employee dot pay salary, employee dot register, employee dot promote, employee dot depromote, anything I am doing, I should be able to do developer dot depromote, developer dot promote, developer dot pay salary. Does it make sense? Can I get quick yeses? Shivan is saying to repeat. I just repeat. Does it work? इतना complex नाम क्यों है? We will repeat. We will understand that now. Now there is a very,
give us the example where we are breaking this principle, because in this example we are following.
Exactly. So that is what I was coming to now. So now hearing this, it seems very simple, right? Because what are we doing? We are just saying what inheritance is, right? That wherever we are using base class, we should be able to use derived class. Everyone understands this much? Yes? Guys?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now coming to the interesting part. Now tell me something. When you do inheritance, you basically extend the properties, right? So here you said that manager is an employee and that is why you extended manager from employee. Secretary is an employee, you extended it. Developer is an employee, you extended it. Now let's take there's a very famous example that I'm going to take. That is, so I have a rectangle class. Does everyone know that every square is a rectangle? Yes?
Yes.
Can I get quick thumbs up so that I know everyone is awake?
Yes.
Yes. So every square is a rectangle, right? So I can do this. I can do inheritance like this. So this is the base class. This is the derived class, right? But coming to a very interesting point. Now, suppose in rectangle, I have a function. So rectangle is my class. Inside this, there is a function change width, where I am updating only the width value. I'm passing X and I'm just updating this. Now, if I have square inheriting from rectangle, extending or inheriting, okay, then I will get this change width. And if I do that, that means I am changing only the width, not the height. The meaning of the square itself gets changed. Now, suppose I have another function called tester inside this, okay? Now tester did what? It said that area should be equal to X into X. Here area should be equal to length into breadth. But because this function was inherited over here, this thing will now stop working. Does it make sense? So even though it seems very obvious that every square is a rectangle, I'm going to inherit from it, but then it doesn't work out. Does it make sense?
Do we really supposed to write this function in a square class? Should not it be abstract rectangle?
Okay, so if it is abstract also, I am not writing change width, no. Even if it is abstract, I am extending square from abstract class. So change width will come inside this, right, by default. That's what inheritance is, right?
Yeah, by default it will come, but we won't be implementing it.
So that means that there is some function, but if someone calls it, then you are gone, no? So now you have written the code, you nicely wrote it. Now you will write code saying that I will never call this function because I have a square. But now again, the principle says that 10 years later, someone else will come, will nicely call square dot change width and will not understand what is happening. Because what would be happening is that in some place you would be doing square, suppose object is say S. Suppose, no, not square. Suppose you were doing rectangle. Suppose R is the object and you were doing R dot change width. Now someone will assume you are a very smart person, so you must have written good code. And here we know that wherever base class is there, we can use derived class because you must have been smart, you must have been following solid principles. So now one day I decide that instead of using base class, I'm going to use derived class square. I will call this after 10 years, gone.
But you can hide that method in the square, can't you?
So there are ways to go around about it, but it is not good, right? It is not a good way of writing it. Like obviously you can say, I just hold my ear like this. Yeah, Jugaad, yes, exactly. We are not
a bad code and then give comment to hide it, right? Like your comment
Yes.
should not be to explain the code. The code should explain yours like itself. So
Exactly.
it's like that.
Exactly. Readable, maintainable code. Yes. Guys, let us take one more example. I don't know how many of you saw the Swiggy Zomato video that I recently uploaded on my channel. There is that I used to take that example for my bootcamp also. Let me cover that. So in Swiggy, if you see, there are basically three kind of people involved, right? One is delivery partner. Another is the customer itself who is placing the order. And one is our restaurant owner, correct? So what I did, I had one class, a user. Now, very nicely, I did what? I just derived this customer, restaurant owner, and everything, correct? Can someone tell me the problem that can come from here? Anyone who can tell me? Anyone who can think about it, the problem that is going to come? Okay, let me talk about it. Let me talk about it. See, delivery partner and restaurant owner is sort of our guys, right? Zomato, Swiggy, when we are designing Swiggy, Zomato, they are our people. Now I might want to do say KYC for this. And now inside user, I went and I wrote KYC. Now what you will do is that KYC will by default come in delivery partner, customer and restaurant owner. But why my customer has to do KYC? Just customer, no, can come and place order. Why has to do KYC? So what some people might do is that I've written KYC. Now this comes. Now I will do what? I will just inherit and I will write one empty code and I will write a function over there that this is a dummy function. You must have seen these comments in your daily work, right? Dummy function does nothing. I had to inherit, so I wrote it. Has anyone of you seen such code in daily work? I've seen it. No one has seen it, is working in very good companies.
Throw not implemented exception.
Yes.
We throw the exception in that function.
Yes. And someone is saying I've written it also. Very good.
I have a question, right? So when you write KYC in user, you're already breaking your open close principle, correct? Because writing KYC in user already means that the scope of product is not being thought upon.
Exactly. Which brings me to my next point. Very good. See, can you mute yourself? A disturbance is coming. Yeah. See, which brings me to my next point. A lot of solid principles are interrelated. When you're going to violate one, you might be violating the other two also. And we will understand that with more examples. When you will look at any one design pattern, you will realize, oh, this design pattern is solving so many of these principles, like maybe all 5 or all 4. You will realize. So there is an overlap. So when you think of solid principles one by one, you will start realizing that, you follow one or two, you will end up following the others also. So it will work like this, but you need to understand what each of them means. Does it make sense, guys, everyone? Yes. There's another function that I will give you for violation of Liskov substitution, because this is a very common mistake that everyone does. So there is yet another example. So suppose, for example, I have, say, a UI widget. Okay. Now I suppose I say that, all my UI widgets, I'm going to click, right? I'm going to click, do something. Now from this, I have, say, a button. Different kinds of button are coming. I end up writing one called, suppose, text box. Now in my text box, does click make sense? No, right? Like maybe you will start typing from there, but writing the text box makes more sense than clicking it, right? So this doesn't make much sense. So suppose there was write text. Now write text won't make sense for button. So you have to have correct ones for correct ones. Yes. So while extending, you have to understand that when you're extending from base class to derived class, you should be extending all the properties. Okay, people are asking me to repeat the KYC problem. Let me just quickly give you a summary. What I did, see, I have three kind of users. Okay, so what I did, I created one user class, and I had what? I had a delivery partner, I had a customer, and I had a restaurant owner. Okay, now I am doing what? I am doing KYC. Now I have written one like this also. Now what I did was, okay, let me give you an example of this. How am I violating Liskov substitution? So now wherever I am, what does Liskov substitution principle say? It says that wherever you are using the base class, you should be able to use the derived classes, right? Now in my base class user, I am saying KYC. Suppose I am doing user.kyc at the beginning. So suppose there is a class called user registration. And inside this, other than entering names, I have written user KYC. Now, it does make sense that I can replace this user with delivery partner or with restaurant owner. But can I replace the user with customer? It doesn't make sense, right? Because customer.kyc is not there. So what am I doing? I am basically adding a simple function. It doesn't make sense also. So I am forcing, so I cannot actually basically replace user with customer. Similarly, over here, did you understand that I cannot replace a square with rectangle? Make sense? Everyone, guys?
Kirti, what about let's say you had a user class, right? And let's say we also have a derived class called employee, and the two classes we talked about, the rider and I think I forgot the other one. Those are inheriting from employee. Now, would substitution mean that even it should substitute for the user class or only for the employee class? Like what happens in a multi-level case?
Right, right. So we could have something like, so that is actually the solution, no, of doing this. So how you could have done is that user, now there's an employee, and suppose rather than employee, I think the better term is partner, right? And delivery partner and restaurant owner are basically our partners, right? So whoever are our partners will have to do KYC. So tomorrow, if I want to add another sort of partner, they will have to do KYC versus there is some customer who is just coming from user. Does it make sense?
Kirti, how do we add, like you said that let's say you forgot to add KYC at first place in the user's abstract class, and then later you had to add this KYC function. Then how that will be achieved using this principle? Like, I'm getting confused between like how you like extending it later. Are we talking about that, or are we talking about how KYC function will work for doesn't work for customer and works for partner?
See, I was just giving you an example where you were violating it. If suppose if you were saying that user has written like this and you did not foresee, you did not think that, okay, I would have to do KYC of these two. That is your problem, right? See, there are multiple ways. One way is that you write a KYC function in both of them, but that means you're not doing reusability. You need to reuse them also, right? So in that case, what you can do is that from user, you can have another partner, and from this you will have to add here. Because in the end, you have to do KYC for both of them, right? So that is why when we write code, we have to think about requirements, about extendability. See, while writing this code itself, you must have thought that the way our customers are going to work and the way our delivery partner and owner is going to work is going to be different, right? Because they're working with us versus this is just a customer who will come and just place an order versus these are the people who are working with us. So there has to be another level for them, right? That is that these are the kind of questions that will come once we start looking at the requirements and once we start designing. And that is why we will learn tomorrow why designing is like very important before we start writing the code. Because once we start writing the code, we usually don't think that, okay, delivery partner and owner are like different kinds of classes versus customer is a different kind of class. And we might not think of it. And once we design it, we might think of it and structure it properly and then implement it into the code. And that is why designing is very, very important. Yes?
I have a question. So what if we use composition?
I have not discussed composition versus inheritance till now, right? So can we just pause it till tomorrow? I'll come back to that. Yeah, okay. Take care. Coming to the I, so from solid, guys, if you have any doubts in any of this, it is completely fine. We are going to repeating this concept so many times. We'll look at examples, we'll look at the code. It will get much more clearer. This is just the first class, okay? So please don't get overwhelmed for especially the beginners. It is okay if you're not understanding, it will get clearer, okay? So have you understood single responsibility, open, close, list of substitution? Some idea about it? Yes, yes, yes. Can I move ahead? 2 more to go. Yes, okay. So coming to the I part, can anyone tell me what does I stand for?
Interface segregation principle.
Interface segregation principle. Someone has given a very good example also. Naveen is saying that avoid fat interfaces, prefer thin ones. No fat shaming over here. But okay. Firstly, can you mute yourself? I am muting you. Okay, cool. So basically, yes, that in very easy terms, that is what it says, that no client should be forced to depend on methods that it doesn't use. So basically use smaller, more specific interfaces. And very interestingly, we already looked at an example of this. So we should use smaller, more specific interfaces. Can you tell me what was the example we just looked at?
KYC example.
Yes. So basically here, when we looked at the solution, right, what did we do? So this was a fatter interface. Then we looked at smaller interfaces, right? So we want to have smaller, more specific interfaces. So partner is a more specific interface, that delivery partner and owner is a partner. Basically, they will have to do KYC. And that is what this principle says, that instead of forcing any client, so basically forcing any class, so basically you're forcing the customer over here to implement KYC. You should not do that, right? So you should not force any class to depend on methods that it doesn't use. You should have smaller, more specific interfaces. Does it make sense? I don't think I have to spend more time in this because I sort of covered it with LSP while giving the examples. Yes? Everyone with me?
Yeah. Kirti, are you saying that we should be doing nesting of interfaces? Like first we said that what is common, we should put it into the base class, then extend it to another interfaces classes again. And then, right, so nesting has to be done in such case, like to come to a solution to this problem.
So tomorrow what is going to happen is that we are going to talk about composition versus inheritance, and that is where we will talk about this a bit more. And that this is actually one of the reasons why people say that composition is basically better than inheritance. For those who are wondering, I will quickly say, so basically when you have a class A and you have an object of class B inside it, right? Instead of doing A inherits from B, so this is basically has a relationship and this is a relationship. We'll discuss this more in detail tomorrow. When we have inheritance, there's a lot of problems that comes with it. One is multi-level inheritance. One is multiple inheritance. What does multiple inheritance means? That there is A, there is B. You are inheriting both the features. Like for example, there is a vehicle and there is a music player. Okay. And you have a car. Now car is a vehicle and is also a music player. Now I have to inherit from both of them, right? So we will talk about problems like multi-level inheritance and multiple inheritance. Like we are inheriting multiple interfaces and multi-level also. We'll discuss this more in detail, right? For now, just understand the principles at a higher level and we'll get into the details. Cool? Yes?
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Okay. Coming to the last D part, and then we will be done for solid. So what does D stand for? Does anyone know?
Kirti, sorry to interrupt. Can you please explain ISP once more time?
See, ISP just says that you should have smaller, more specific interfaces instead of having a big interface. And we actually saw the example of that in this. So when we had a user interface, we were forcing our customer class to have KYC, right? So we were forcing this particular class to depend on a method, to have a method that it is not even using it, right? So that is why, so what it says is that no class should be forced to have methods that it doesn't require. And you should have as smaller and more specific interfaces as possible. We already saw the example of this. That is why I moved right. Does it make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Dependency inversion principle, guys. Will someone tell me what is dependency inversion principle? Dependency inversion principle.
So let's say class A has a B class in it, and now we are B class is dependent on A, right? So we need to get an instance of B. It has to be called by A. Now instead of this, we do an inversion. We outsource it to somebody else. We delegate to somebody else. Like we can have like Spring has it. Some container which would be giving you the objects. So you are keeping them decoupled. You're not coupling A and B, though B belongs to A, but then you are decoupling it.
Right. So decoupling is the most important part over here. So basically our main aim over here is to have loose coupling, right? Why loose coupling? So let's take some examples. So let's take the example of notification, and we will actually look at this entire example in a design pattern also. So say we have a notification manager. Okay. Now inside this, we have like many types of notification senders, right? So suppose if we want to send SMS, then I will have suppose SMS sender dot send message, right? Then if WhatsApp sender, if WhatsApp, then WhatsApp sender is going to send message, right? Like this, I have if else condition. But now what happens is that tomorrow, if I have to add another one, then what will end up happening is that I will have to keep adding if else. Suppose if Telegram comes or if it threads comes or something comes, I'll have to keep adding to this, right? So in this case, I'm trying to tell you a few jargons that you need to understand. The notification is sort of a high level module. This is a high level module. And these small SMS sender, WhatsApp sender, these are what? These are low level modules. And I guess you must have already understood that we are, violating a lot of other principles also. Can you tell me which other principle are we violating over here? If I write code like this, if else.
Open close principle.
Open close also, right? Because if I have to add another one, then I'm violating that also, right? I'm unable to add more features, right? Single responsibility also, because sending the message, sending WhatsApp and all of that, it's one manager's responsibility also, right? So there are multiple principles that I'm violating. Okay, let me note you. Cool. So now instead of this, what am I going to do is there is a notification manager. And from here, I am going to do what? I am going to add an interface whose name I'm going to say iNotification sender. And from this, I am going to have SMS sender, WhatsApp sender. I'm going to have, say, email sender. And I'm going to have Telegram sender. So tomorrow, if I have to add another one, I can quickly add it. So now, what does my dependency inversion principle say? That this is high level module, right? Your high level module should not depend on your low level modules. These are low level modules. Instead, there should be an abstraction layer in between. What is the abstraction layer? It is the iNotification sender. And this is what is called loose coupling. What is loose coupling? There is no tight coupling. Why? Because your notification manager has no idea about which all senders are there. If I remove this, your notification manager will not even come to know. If I add this, your notification manager will not even come to know. That is the amount of loose coupling, right? It also follows open close principle. How? I can add new features and I wouldn't have to test or make changes to the previous features. You remember when we talked about open close principle, I said interfaces and abstract classes are going to solve a lot of your problems, right? It is going to be the solution of a lot of your problems. Remember that? Yes, guys, can I get quick yeses? Guys? Yes? Okay.
Kirti, one more question. So in that sense, the KYC thing also follows this principle, right? Where we separate partner and customer.
Correct. Yeah, you can say yes, yes. Again, overlap of multiple principles. Before we get into more details, can we do a quick revision? Let's write them down. What does solid actually mean? What does S stand for? Who's going to tell me? S stands for responsibility principle. What does it mean?
A class should have only a single reason to change.
Right, single reason to change or one responsibility, very simple thing, right? Now, what does O stand for?
Open to extension, close.
Open close principle, right? What does it mean in very simple terms? We should be able to add new functionality without changing present. Yes. Now it does make sense also, right? I hope like it doesn't like, it seems like very obvious thing that we should be doing all of this while writing the code, right? Now, LSP was what? Liskov substitution. What does this mean? That superclasses object or the base classes object can be replaced by the subclasses object, right? At any point. Okay. Okay, I'm quickly muting you guys. Some disturbance is coming. Okay. After this, I stands for what? Interface segregation. What does that mean? What does it mean?
Not to have unrelated items in a single interface.
Right. So no, don't force to implement methods not needed. Or basically, I am saying that have small interfaces. Correct? What is D? Dependency inversion. What does dependency inversion say? That high level modules should not depend on low level modules. Should not.
Kirti, is dependency inversion and dependency injection both are same?
I keep getting this question. We'll cover it. We'll cover it. Not exactly, but we'll cover it. It is part of that. Okay. So, okay. So now, okay, this brings us to the end of the first class, but let's do a quick revision. So we just quickly revised OOPS today. We understood what are classes, objects, inheritance. I know that it was a bit of commotion in the starting because a lot of people were unmuting themselves and most of you knew. But those who are from JavaScript background or Python background who found anything overwhelming of OOPS or anything at all, please message on Discord or mail me. I will either explain it to you separately, take extra class, explain on Discord, give you resources or whatever is needed, because we are going to be coding in C++ and Java. So if you are from any other background and you find it overwhelming, please let me know. We will try to help you out in any way possible. I also have a team, so we will be helping you in any way possible. Okay, don't worry at all. We also did solid principles today. Tomorrow we'll start from relationships between the classes. We will look at what are UML diagrams. We will discuss this in more in detail. We will start converting our designs into the diagrams, and we'll understand how to write the diagram, how to draw the diagram, because from day after tomorrow, when we start like factory design pattern, after abstract factory design pattern and all of that, you will be first drawing the UML diagram. Secondly, you will be talking about the design, about the details, and then you will be writing the code. So this is how we'll be doing everything. Yep. Yes, my mail is workwithkirtiprasani@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me at support@kirtiprasanicourses.com. For all of you, I would say the best part is the Discord group. Don't message on personal on Discord. I might miss it. Either the Discord, everything is there, right? Separate channels are there, platform and all of that is there. If you do on Discord, it will be better because my team can also help you in that case. If you mail me, then I'll have to do it personally. So try it out. Yep. For the for those who are saying the previous link has expired, I've updated the link in the on the site itself. So once you log in, you can see under the community section there is a new link. Okay, so you can refer to that also. You can create different channels for different programming languages. Yes, that's a good idea. We'll do that. And also, if you have not filled out the form, please fill it out, because depending on that, I will be dividing you into groups. So you can review each other's code also. You can help each other understand the code, because LLD is a bit language specific. So let's try that, people of the same language are connected and they have groups. Okay. Naveen is asking what are you going to cover tomorrow? Yes, relations between the classes. We will understand composition, aggregation, what is better, composition or interface. We'll talk about relationships between the classes and UML in detail. So that is majorly what we are going to do. And we will also look at what is dry, KISS, Yagni, all of those principles. So solid is the most important thing, and we have already done it. And also, guys, I will be adding quiz today. Please try to solve quizzes. On the last day, mostly every Friday, I will give you assignments which you can do over the weekend. And rest of the classes, I'll be giving you quizzes. Please participate in the quizzes. Again, if you found today's class overwhelming, trust me, by the end of probably second week, you will go like, solid principles is nothing. I completely understand it. Okay. But right now, if you have any doubts, please reach out to me on Discord. Okay. Where can we find notes? You will find it under the content section itself, where you found the Teams link. I will update everything under the content section. Once you log in, you will be able to see it over there. Yep. Someone is saying, is it possible to balance the design without violating ISP and RISC-V? Because in the example having nested interfaces, example partner and customer, we cannot pass in the nested child interface in the place of parent interface. And we will discuss the possible solutions for that when we discuss the relationships between the classes. Okay, so we will discuss those. Okay,
So
but
Kirti,
our
quick,
focus. Give me
a
one
quick
second.
question. Where is the form that you mentioned that you're going to group us? Where is that posted?
Okay. So there is a Google Forms that is already there in the content section also. As soon as you log in, you will be able to see it. And I've also sent it over mail. And like, just check your mail or check the content section. If you're not receiving mail, just mail me, because maybe your registered mail ID is not there in the list. I will get it sorted. Okay. If you found
Did you
anything
assign the groups as well?
Sorry?
Did you assign the groups?
I will assign the group today or tomorrow, because a lot of people had not filled it. Like a lot of you signed up only yesterday and day before yesterday. So I'll have to reassign the groups. I had already done that, but I will reassign the groups and I will send it to you by tomorrow. Cool?
Okay.
Yeah. I will give you. Yeah.
Actually, I had gone through some of your LLDs. So those LLDs don't take into picture any framework. It talks about the structure of an LLD, but it doesn't talk about how does a framework can be integrated into it. Say J2E pattern or a Spring or any other struts, anything. Well, because I think a lot of us now, I am not a coder though, I am actually a business analyst. So I have joined to understand how the coding happens. But then what I have seen the developers doing, they're using a framework to code the LLD part as well.
Right. See, when it comes to LLD interviews, like you will definitely not be asked to implement, like use the frameworks. Plus, it is like better, like how you can say, like, there are like that is actually not a part of LLD. Like it does come under, say, using how different apps, right? Like MVVM and all of this people were talking about on Discord. So there are different frameworks that are being used. If you are a complete beginner, I can help you out on Discord or other places. Like we will also be working on projects. Like I'll also give you a hackathon. So if you face any issue being a beginner, I can definitely help you out. But when it comes to LLD, our major focus is going to be on understanding how to structure the code, because that is what the course is about, right? But if you need help with the frameworks and all also, Discord server will be very, very active 5 weeks. So you can ask anything over there.
Any material or reference you can suggest wherein it explains how are frameworks being designed on design pattern? Like
Okay,
how,
let me see. So although I think it will get overwhelming right now, let me cover at least 2-3 design patterns. And after that, I will probably send you more, things
links
to
read.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, Kirti.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask is basically in my day-to-day job, I will be coding both. So basically, I have a little amount of experience in both Java and C++. So what would you prefer, in which language should I study this coding?
See, you can pick up any. The good thing I think about this course is that, if you are from C++, you will get to know a bit about Java. If you're from Java, you'll get to know a bit about C++. If you don't know both, you will understand that it is just a matter of syntax. Like how I talked about abstract interfaces, right? That is more or less the same thing. Like you have virtual in one, you don't have virtual in one, and that you have to write abstract interface in Java. In C++, you don't have to write it. So basically, it is only the point of syntaxes. So you can pick up any language. I am personally a C++ developer, and I'm even teaching in Java because the only difference is syntax. I have never worked so much in Java. I have experience only in C++. Still, I'm able to explain why, because the difference is only in syntax, right? Yep.
Kirti, if I am doing competitive programming in C++, so syntax-wise, I am much comfortable in C++. But during my project, what I mainly do in Java. So regarding this OOPS concept, design pattern, everything I can comfortably code in Java. So which one should I pick? Like any one language I should be stick for
You
LLD,
can pick
whether
up any.
Java.
You can pick up any. Like you can do in both also, because I will be doing in both, so you can do in both. You will get to learn only, no, what is the harm. You will realize that it is just a matter of syntax.
Okay.
Kirti?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just one request. I actually sent a mail to you also. All the design partners were means in the curriculum and all the things. One request, if it's possible, can you add the state design patterns there?
Which design patterns?
State design pattern.
Okay, okay.
Mm.
Let me see if it is possible to add in the course. I'll do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
because all the state machines are using the state design pattern. We will see most of these projects that state machines were using. So mostly it depends on the state design pattern.
Acha. Okay, let me see. Let me see if it is possible. I'll check out your mail also. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
State design.
Okay. Guys, if you have any other
Just another question. Just following up on the previous one, So I just wanted to ask that in both the languages, Java and C++, basically which is being used more in the industry, and if I had to pick one of these two, which would be a good skill to add.
Okay, there was a lot of disturbance. Are you asking me what is used more in the industry? Was that the question?
Correct. Yes.
Although I have a thing for C++, I prefer C++, but the thing is that nowadays a lot of companies have moved to Java, and see, it really depends. Like in Intuit, I used to work on C++. My adjacent team used to work on Java. Some companies have moved from C++ to Java. So companies work in both, but I think more companies work in Java comparatively. I think so now.
So,
but there are still a lot of companies that work in C++, like Adobe, Intuit, Upstocks. There are a lot of companies that work in C++.
Okay, so basically going forward, according to you, which could be a good language to add with the HTML.
According to me, I think you should be focusing more on the concepts right now and pick up any one language, because I think as good software developers, you'll be able to code in anything, no matter what language is. Sometimes you'll be given work in any other language, so you can pick up literally anything.
Okay,
Yes.
Kirti, I have one question that I am interviewing for Java developers. So can I code in C++ in that interview?
So it depends on the company. Some companies allow you to do that because they don't care about the syntaxes. Some teams are very specific that no, you should, like for example, in Intuit, I had a C++ specific round and they tested my C++ knowledge. So if that is the kind of team that you're joining, then they will expect you to do that. But usually they don't care, and you can code in any language. Like companies like Google, Amazon, they don't care about which language you are coding in. When I interviewed for Amazon, Google, all of these companies, Microsoft, none of the companies even asked me which language I was going to code in.
And what about Adobe, Microsoft? These are more focused on C++, right?
Adobe, Microsoft has more work in C++. As I said, in Adobe, you will find teams working in C++, also in Java also. And Intuit also, you'll find both the teams. So in Atlassian, there were more teams of Java than of C++. In Adobe, you will find more teams of C++ than Java. So it is very, very specific.
So in that case, we need to code in C++, or I can go with Java also.
Why are you so much behind language? Just pick up any one thing. Like you can face interviews in both.
Yeah, I was just concerned that whether they will judge me based on the language, not on the concept.
No, they will not. They will not. They will.
Okay, fine.
I think you can ask them ahead of time, tell them you'll code in this language.
Yeah, if they have a specific requirement for C++, they will already tell you, and then you have to, means if it is C++, they should be ready with C++.
Exactly.
But they will tell you already.
Yep. Like I said, I had a specific round for C++ because they wanted to see how much knowledge I have about C++. So in a C++ specific interview, you will have questions like VPTR and all that people were asking today, right? So in that case, like you will have to prepare for C++ or for Java. But like for DSA rounds, for LLD round, for system design and all of this, most companies don't care.
So in this course, would you be actually covering language specific questions like the ones you just mentioned? C++ or Java?
So those are very, very, specific questions. Like someone was asking how VPTR works, right? So I don't think I'm not planning to cover all of those details, because then though I will have to end up covering like everything in C++ and Java, right? So whatever is usually asked in LLD and like, expected in degree work, I'll cover all of that.
Okay.
I've been trying. Yeah. So basically, we are getting a feeling what solid principle is, but the issue is when it comes to interview, we need some certain keywords, right? Like for interfaces, you use the word data members and all these things, right? So will your notes cover these things, or it will be?
It's the first class. Relax. We will cover
Yeah.
everything. By the end, like by like in 2-3 classes itself, you will tell me the keywords. I will listen to you.
Oh, great to
Kirti,
know.
quick
Thank you.
question. Would you be able to share some resources for brushing up on C++ skills? I know that you mentioned you won't be covering it, but I want to actually get myself familiar with those.
Sure. For C++ students, I will also really suggest most of the things that I was asked in C++ specific interviews, no, I've already covered it on my channel. Like, so there is one video on VPTR, there is one video on how, like, how it works, one video on smart pointers, on implementation of string. So I was asked implementation of string in Intuit. I was asked smart pointers in Intuit. Like these Adobe, Intuit, these companies ask these C++ specific things. So you can go check that out. Like all of that I've already covered. And if there are any free resources also that I find, I will share.
And how about SQL libraries? Do they, is that part of the language interviews?
Which libraries?
STL.
Yes, so I have covered that also. That is also asked. Already there on my channel. So there is one playlist called #C++, one playlist called C++ STL. You can check out both the playlists.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, there's going to be a quiz today. Someone is asking. Yeah.
I have a question. The thing is, we have these 3 types of design patterns, right? Creational, behavioral, and structural. I mean, creational is fine. I understand what creational is, but I have a real difficulty to find out what exactly is the difference between structural and behavioral. Can you help me understand that better?
See, again, I would just say this for everyone, like for all the topics that we are going to cover. See, once we have covered anything and I say that we are done with it, then you can start asking me questions about it, right? But try to have some patience and trust that if I've said I'm going to cover design patterns, I'm going to cover these things. Don't worry about it. I'm going to explain what are creational design patterns, is structural, behavioral, right? If you ask now, others might get overwhelmed because there are a lot of beginners. And if I explain now, like people will get overwhelmed, will get a bit distracted. And right. So just give me some time. I think I'm going to cover it day after tomorrow itself.
The reason I have a question, I get confused in the broad classification itself.
I understand. I will cover it properly. If you still have doubt after that, let me know. I'll make sure that it is clear. Okay.
Hi Kirti. Currently I'm working in a product-based company that is having around 5 years of experience. I want to make a good switch, like to Uber or maybe to Google or something. So how should be my approach?
You can just mention on in the form itself. You can just mention in the other section, or you can mention on the Discord server. I will assign you to a group accordingly. Yep.
Okay.
And
is there a complete course like DSA, high level design, low level design, everything combined in one course that we can cover in 3 or 4 months from your side? That would be very helpful.
So there was already a 5 weeks high level system design course, right? This is another 5-week low level system design course. After this, DSA is also coming. So if you sign up for all 3, you'll be done preparing.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Hi, Kirti. How to think about the real life, how to think about the real life systems that you explained and you took the examples, when you were explaining these solid principles. Because as a beginner,
I understand. See, as beginners, we are used to taking examples of person, employee, all of this, right? start thinking, like I will tell you that when we think of any system, we have to start thinking from requirements. What are things we are trying to solve? What are the different entities involved? What are the different classes involved? And then we'll think of the use cases and we'll take it forward. I will help you develop the thought process. And that is why I was encouraging that whenever you think of any examples, think that, what all entities are involved in, say, Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Ola, Amazon. Try to think of the entities and you will have the answer yourself. Yep. We will develop the thought process. Don't worry. I understand.
Hello, Kirti.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, I just want to ask one question. Can we write as maintainable and extendable code using functional paradigm only? Because in my company, we are not allowed to use class-based approach. So I was just having this question.
See, there are very, very, old or very, very specific companies only who write code in functional paradigm. I would really suggest that even if your company does it, I don't think it is a good practice in long term. I think because they have been doing it, they are used to it. I think we should be doing object oriented programming. So that is what major of the recent languages do, and that is what we do, right? So yes, this is a very new thing. Like the very less number of companies use this, but I guess it might be interestingly challenging to do it. But I would suggest you to do object oriented and class based approach, like in terms of upscaling.
I have been working and practicing a lot on the like questions on these hoops-based approaches and different design patterns. But I actually asked my own manager, who is at the top level, who decides what approach should be taken. He is saying that that basically nowadays generally we are shifting towards more like functional programming, because many languages are also offering now functional approach, like in Java, in other languages, also in Scala. So I was like little bit getting confused whether like practicing like OOPS concept is more like useful now or not.
Okay. Do one thing, try picking up any systems like, right? Okay, like Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Ola, again, whatever systems I've been talking about, pick up the requirements and try to solve it in terms of functional. And then we'll discuss that what is a better approach. If like
I actually asked one question. I wasn't able to figure it out also, because in state pattern what happens is that your behavior changes depending upon the state of an object. So I was finding really it hard to how to implement it in functional approach. So that's the way like I couldn't think in that way. So I was just asking whether like should I follow some, are there any good resources on functional approach, or is the industry moving towards functional approach, or is still object oriented approach is much better?
I don't think the industry is moving towards functional approach. I think everyone will tell you the same thing. Managers, as Sanjeev is saying, will tell you what company is doing is the best thing. But in terms of upskilling, you definitely need to know object-oriented programming. Trust me, you do.
Yeah, actually, the thing is, this functional paradigm is actually a new thing. So there are new things that people are moving towards functional paradigm. But so this is mostly applicable where you want to write like more parallel programming, like more where you want speed and all. So yeah, but it is difficult to write like code how we think about in OOPS.
But also here also I don't know from which language you are coming from. By you I mean Vishal, who raised the question. Language specific requirements or solutions I'm not sure about. But just I mostly work in JavaScript, so I'll just give you a solution for that. That is, if there is any sort of project where the client doesn't want to use class-based approach, or there is certain requirement which is old project, or it is not using a class-based approach at all, then instead of writing simple functions, or instead of just typing all the functions, you might want to follow other specific types of question which will be more inclined towards object oriented approach. What I mean by that is, let's say in JavaScript you have closures, you have factory functions, you have constructor functions. So even if you don't have classes, you can replace them with constructor functions. So similarly, if you have something equivalent solution, then you can replace it with that. But obviously that's like worst case scenario, not the best approach. Yeah.
So actually we are working, actually I'm working in TypeScript, and basically I tend to find that my whole company source code
If you are
has been written using many if else and statements. So I find it like find it really weird that most of the time if any requirement changes comes, we had to do a lot more modifications and open so many files. So and had to make sure that all those functionalities regarding where it is being used, so we have to test it again and again. So I find it really weird why those top level like decision makers like force us to do so. I'm not getting it totally.
I will say the reason I find out recently is because I'm not sure also why it is happening that much. Most of the junior developers somehow they're afraid of class-based approach. I have absolutely no idea why, but
Uh,
that's what seems to happen. Like
I
in different languages, I find
yeah,
out.
actually, I think. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, actually, I think with the advent of microservice architecture, this has become a trend because then when you are building a smaller service, it's easy to build it in functional approach.
In
Now
long term,
people
you
are
don't think
thinking,
about it.
yeah, but
Yeah,
when you have
correct.
thousands of microservices, then it can be a big headache
Then it
even
becomes
for the
like
organization.
Yeah,
once
basically
when
those
if you
serverless
come
and
to
lambdas has come. No?
Right.
Yes,
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
if you're building a monolithic application, I think if you try to use functional approach, then you will break application at so many times that you will just give that application that just take it away.
Yeah. It's a
And
clear, like it might be a clear indication. If you're not using oops based approach, then that means your specific product is not going to scale very much in the future. That can
and
be a very good.
also I believe one of the reasons is also maybe because like Java means languages like Java have pushed abstraction to such a level that now everything is like they have given lots of features, so people are getting overwhelmed. And then when languages like Go come along, people are thinking like, okay, this is very much simple and easier to just to start working with. Not that Java is good or Go is bad, but then once that train picks up, then everyone is like, okay, we need functional is good, but
Yeah.
it's not the case always, right?
Oh, also one more confusion that comes up. Just because it is a very language specific, so someone might have some doubt with it. So I'm just clarifying it. Class object oriented programming doesn't mean you have to write everything class based. So what I mean by that, for example, in React, I specifically work in React a lot. So in React, we used to write a lot of the code in class based approach, right? But React officially has moved on to functional based approach, like in most of the cases. But that doesn't mean you are not going to follow object oriented programming. Object oriented programming and React's way of implementing class is very two different, like two very different ways. So please don't confuse in between them.
No, the
I
issue is
understand
I'm not.
that when you are working with other languages, it can be a bit overwhelming because right now we are discussing only in terms of C++ and Java, right? So people from JavaScript, Python might find it a bit overwhelming. Guys, the thing is that it is Tuesday and we have 2 more classes to go for this week. So I don't want to make you all stay back and, really I don't want to push you so much. I love the discussions. I absolutely love them. But let's continue them on Discord. What do you think? Because next 2 days, if people don't show up, it is going to be really bad. On Friday, we can stay back and discuss for as long as we need. And let's discuss all of this on Discord as well. What do you think? Yeah.
Sure, ma'am.
I do love the discussions. I absolutely do. But in my experience, if I make you stay back today, then the thing is that you guys won't show up tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So that is why I want to disperse the class quickly as much as possible. And then let's discuss tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll start on time, 9 p.m. itself, on Teams itself. And Vishal, let me also read up a bit about it. Can you share more details on Discord? Let's see what we can do to help you out.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a very good night, everyone. I hope you had a good class. Thank you. Bye.